Okay, so the first thing on my wish list has to do with the starting pitching. So the Yankees starting rotation is Gerrit Cole, Carlos Rodon, Nestor Cortez, Luis Severino, and Frankie Montas. They would be, in my opinion, if I had to write them down 1 to 5, that would be the order I would put them in. My wish list is that by the end of the season, I personally don't have an innings goal, like how many innings I want them to pitch, because I'm going to drive myself nuts if I do that. But I think all 5 of these starting pitchers, Liam, can finish with a sub 4.0 ERA. Gerrit Cole had a 3.5. Rodon had a 2.8. Cortez had a 2.4. Severino had a 3.2, just about. And as a Yankee, this is the important part. As a Yankee, Frankie Montas' ERA was higher than a 6. Now, those weren't the numbers, Liam, that we saw from Frankie Montas when he was the ace over in Oakland. So I know there were a lot of things going on. He came over midseason. He's obviously looking at the ERA. He's the one that you're concerned about. Granted, the Yankees as a whole didn't play their best baseball post All-Star break, and Montas sadly contributed to that. But I mean, we've seen the numbers. We know he can be an ace. We know he can pitch, and I very well think he can get healthy. He can fix some things, and he can get his ERA under a 4.0. I mean, of the starting pitchers, Gerrit Cole, we know his weakness is the home run ball, and that's also sort of the tragedy, the blessing and the curse of Yankee Stadium. As a hitter, you love it. You love having a lefty. I mean, do you know how many times I saw Brett Gardner squeak one 315 feet over the right field wall when he was playing for a 1 out of 30? I loved it. It was fantastic. It was fantastic to watch. But that's Gerrit Cole's kryptonite right now, is that home run ball. And if he can cut down on that, Gerrit Cole's 3.5 will get even lower. And we know the strikeout capability he has. I don't know the number exactly. I can probably find it next time I mute, but his strikeout potential per 9 innings is ridiculous. One of the best in the league. Rodon was sub 3. Liam, you made a great point about the fly ball rate. That is definitely a concern of mine with just the short porch and the home run ball. So, I mean, I still think Rodon is a great signing and he'll do well. And I'm using Nestor Cortez more as a example of me trying to think that he can stay under a 3, because Nestor is a 2.4. If Nestor can stay off the IL, I would love that. But I think Nestor is nasty, dude. We saw him pitch in that game 5, and my
he was
goodness,
so good.
He's a tough little son of a to get a hit off the fan. Severino, I think it's more of a health concern, and that's not the talent's there. We know what he can do. We've seen it. Now I want to see more of it, and I think if he can stay healthy, he's got good stuff. I think he'll give the bullpen a nice reprieve if Severino can keep going the distance longer. Because I have a slight concern about the back end of the bullpen for the Yankees, but we'll get into that later. And then Montas with the 6.35. I really do think he can clean it up, Liam. How do you feel? I think Montas is the big question mark right now. I think we've seen what he can do, and I think the Yankees brought him in feeling good. I still think the Yankees feel pretty good about him. Curious, what do you think, Liam?
Yeah, I think the Yankees have approached their staff pretty well in the offseason. Like, I think reinforcing with Rodon is the right thing to do, because Montas, he gave you a flash of what the bottom looks like, of what the bottom end of what he can do looks like. And if that is a 5 starter, then ultimately he's competing with Herman for that 5th starter. But he has it's a really small sample size, especially for starting pitchers, where Montas only got I think less than 10 starts with the Yankees. 8 starts with the Yankees.
Less than 40 innings, 8 starts.
Yeah, so he had some real bad blowups, but right after the deadline, he had a family issue. There was a death in the family. He also had some injury concern. Came back at the time where the Yankees were at the lowest point of morale that they were the entire season, and his performances did contribute to some of those big losses and games where we went up early and then he gave up 6 to 8 runs. However, Montas has a proven track record of being a top level starting pitcher. So I think to have him as your 4 or 5 level can be a crazy upside for the Yankees. In theory, your wish is that we go into the postseason and we're debating who gets those 3 to 4 starts. when we go into a division series. And that's an awesome place to be, because I don't think that's been a conversation in the past few years. Tyone was that 4 that we hoped for some good stuff out of. Montas has shown that he should be better than Tyone. And Tyone was great for us these last 2 years. Like, he was a real workhorse, but ultimately he gave you 5 innings. He'd give up a big home run here and there. I'm confident in Montas. I have apprehension about some of his attitude towards the end of the year, but he was on a new team. He wasn't performing. I think if he can be sitting around a 4, even, if he's that lowest or that highest ERA rather on the sub 4 that you're looking for, sitting anywhere between 3.8 and 4.2. Honestly, with this rotation, I think that would be great from him. And we don't need great performances, but he still has that potential to be like a 2-level starter for us.
I agree with all of that. I think it's going to be really good for him that he is going to be right now the number 5 guy in the rotation.
And that's a big concern with guys coming to New York, is that if you come to New York, there's an added pressure, but if you don't have to be the one performing, I think that might help him acquaint better.
Agreed. And Liam, I don't think there's really any doubt about this. Like, post All-Star break, there was a lot of doom and gloom around the Yankees for a while. They weren't pitching well. They really weren't hitting well. That was the big thing. And that's right around when Frankie Montas came in. So absolutely not what I'm saying is that this is Frankie Montas came in and changed something about the Yankees. I mean, like, the Yankees were 35 over 500 at one point before the All-Star break, I think. 35, 30. They were definitely 32 above.
Yep.
And that ship got hit a few times. And I'm sure it didn't help Frankie Montas either, but the fact that he can probably come into this season behind Garrett Cole, this Rodon signing should be good for him. If Cortez can keep doing what he's doing, and if Severino stays healthy, I think Frankie Montas we're gonna see that ERA dip closer to what it was in Oakland.
I hope so.
I hope so too. That's why I'm wishing for it.
Yeah.
I have one more, and it's about pitching again, and it's a concern. I don't know what my wish is, but I am curious as to what the Yankees are going to do with the closing spot, the back end of the bullpen, because there was, I believe it was a postseason game, but definitely towards the end of the season, that there was definitely some disagreement on how, whether it was Aaron Boone, I just got an ad for K Jewelers on my computer and it really distracted me. I apologize, everybody. So a little disagreement on when people were going to come in and pitch for what innings against who. And I think the big one was against Cleveland in game 3, when they held out Clay Holmes because they didn't want him to pitch again. And they had Clark Schmidt come in. Is that game 3, Liam? Do I have that right?
I think that was game 3. Yeah.
Okay. Good for me. But there was that kind of disagreement. Clay Holmes was the man in the first half of the year. Prior to the All-Star break, Clay Holmes was absolutely deservedly the best closer in baseball. Look at the numbers. He was fantastic. You look out past the All-Star break, and that's not the same dude who was pitching, at least for the next couple months. The numbers weren't there. And I know the Yankees had Chapman was the closer for a while, and he had performance issues and disciplinary issues off the field as well. So Chapman is not an option anymore. But I'm just curious, because I don't know how sold I am on Clay Holmes as the bona fide closer. You're up a run in the 9th inning. Clay Holmes is going to come in and mow down 3 guys. I should feel confident. We saw what he can do, but we also saw he got lit up a few times. And now there's this injury concern on my part. Like, how often is he going to be available? Can he pitch can he pitch Monday, and then is he out Tuesday, Wednesday, and then he can come back Thursday? Is he pitch 2 innings Monday and then he's done until Friday? I don't know. That just kind of seemed like the semantics that Boone was trying to work around. It just didn't always seem like you had Clay Holmes, who was your best guy, available to be in the toughest spots. And I mean, Clark Schmidt got put in a tough spot. He that game 3 was tough because he got the bad look because he gave up the runs and the late game in the end. But
he came in with runners on with less
Correct.
than 2 outs. Yeah.
Correct. So Clark Schmidt gets kind of like, well, kind of a bad rep for it. Yeah, granted, he gave up a hit and he gave up the runs, but when you come with the runners on base, you're not the closer. You come into that situation, but you had Clay Holmes, who was, I believe, was reported as available in an emergency situation.
And when's an emergency if not then?
Thank you. How is game 3 with runners on base? I believe the series was tied 1-1.
Tied 1-1 with a lead in the bottom of the ninth, with the middle of the lineup for Cleveland. Correct.
How is that not an emergency situation? Now, is that on Boone? Is that on Clay Holmes? Is that on Steinbrenner? That I'm not sure, but I'm not sure what my wish is, Liam. I'm not saying let's go, because I was looking at the relief free agents for relief pitchers, and all these dudes are so old. They're like the most available guy is like 32, who has like the highest WAR and the lowest ERA. And I'm like, I don't know if that's the answer. Maybe it's Clay Holmes. Maybe he is the answer. But I hope the Yankees during the offseason at least look at the options, see what they got with Clay Holmes, figure out the injury, figure out when is he going to be available and when is he not. And the Yankees need to figure out whether it's Boone. What the hell is an emergency if game 3 in the playoffs, with a lead in the ninth is not an emergency? So when do you use them, and who else? Is Zach Britton still a Yankee?
He's technically a free agent. He probably won't be, I would imagine.
Because I just remember he was the closer for the Orioles years ago, but I didn't think he was still a Yankee. So
yeah, with the injury, I don't think they take him back. There's Canely, who we got back.
Yes.
Loizaga, I think really your wish is a solidified closer role.
Yeah.
And the tough thing about this team is that we spoke about on previous podcasts where I think Loizaga might be our best relief pitcher, but Loizaga is really poor on back-to-back days. I think he has an over 6 ERA if he goes back-to-back.
I love numbers.
Yeah,
numbers are great like that.
Exactly.
Who would ever think that?
And my thought going in to one of the episodes that we did was that, all right, Johnny Loizaga, he's our closer now. And then my buddy J Ray, who was on the podcast, he was like, oh, well, he doesn't do so well back to back, or he does really poorly. So that kind of takes away a solidified closer, because sometimes you just need that two games for a series, back to back. Clay Holmes, like you said, we saw the up and down. There's Tommy Canely back. There's Michael King, who got hurt early in the year, but he was used for like a 2-3 inning role last year, and he was our best reliever in the 2 months that he played. And I think the rumor is he'll be good by opening day, if not like May.
Fractured elbow?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, I think that was Michael King.
Yep.
Okay.
So, yeah, so he should be back, but what does that look like? And I think like you said about Clark Schmidt, it was a really tough situation to put him in. Like, my bigger issue with the Clark Schmidt play was that it was him being chosen, not as much as him shitting the bed,
Mm-hmm.
Because Clark Schmidt, not only was he not our solidified closer, who Clay Holmes kind of was, but Clark Schmidt had never been in that situation in the regular season. So to put him in an away game, and Cleveland is like, say what you want about the city of Cleveland being small or whatever you say, their fan base is avid and they're loud, and it's right, their stadium is right in the middle of downtown. You just walk from the downtown streets into the stadium. So there's people not in the stadium who are outside the fence screaming and everything too. Like, it's an 80,000 person atmosphere.
Mm-hmm.
That's unfair to Clark Schmidt, who you didn't have any run as closer. So, a solidified closer would be great. We're obviously spoiled with our history of Mariano, and then having a pretty solid David Robertson and Chapman here and there, but Chapman's gone, Britton likely gone. So we're gonna have to figure out what that looks like, and can Clay Holmes prove it? I think he's the most transferable to it. It might end up being Tommy Canely. Maybe that's why we signed him back. But we'll see how it goes. And I think that's something we can figure out, but I'd like to figure out by July, maybe.
Agreed. And I'm looking at numbers, and really, actually, one of the relief pitchers, I don't know if he's in consideration at all for a closer role, but numbers that are really jumping out at me is Ron Marinaccio.
I think he could be. He might be it.
40 games, a 2.05, and his whip. I like to look at whip for relief pitchers.
Yeah.
Because they only pitch so many innings compared to a starter. So I'm always curious as to who's given up. It's the whip with the walks. I'm always curious as to see for relievers what's their whip, and his whip is a 1.05. Clay Holmes actually is slightly low at 1.02.
Yeah,
Michael King had a 1.00. Nestor was under a 1, and Greg Weisser also had under a 1 in his 12 games.
And I think Marinaccio, that's a good pull, because looking at the stats, to low ERA, high amount of games. He has 4.5 hit per 9, which led everybody that threw an inning. Which is Marvin Gonzalez made the pitching stat.
You saw that too? He keeps popping up. He has a third of an inning.
I take that back. Marvin Gonzalez threw a third of an inning with a 0.0 hits per 9. So
Montas, I'm sorry, but we got a number 5 spot. Yes, let's give him a little round of applause. Well done.
So maybe that's Marinaccio. Maybe that's his role this year. I know he had some weird injury stuff towards the end of last year. But he seems to have a pretty cool head. So yeah, him as our closer, I wouldn't mind that.
Yeah, he's got 24 walks in 44 innings. Clay Holmes had 20 walks in 63 innings.
So, Marinaccio a bit worse on the walks end. But
yes.
Clay also, I feel like we should almost separate the seasons, because Clay didn't let anyone get on base for 3 months. It felt like Clay had a higher walk rate once he became human.
And this, I look at Clay Holmes as the All-Star break, pre and post. Because you could look at a lot of Yankees actually like that, pre and post. Because
August was one of the worst months in Yankees history.
It was, it was.
Actually, statistically.
Yeah, like I said, there was a lot of doom and gloom for the Yankees come August and late July. There was a lot of doom and gloom. But
there was a day in June I ended up pulling the trigger. I think I texted Jake, and I had been waiting on it because the Yankees started off so well. It was like mid-June. I texted, if the Yankees go 500 the rest of the year, they win 100 games. And the Yankees ended up winning 99 games. So they went under 500 after mid-June, and they had a good September. So that goes to tell you how shitty between the All-Star break and September 1st was for the Yankees.
Yeah, it was a disaster on all fronts. Yep. Hitting, defensive, pitching, just nobody was the same. But they played well enough to sneak in and still get that 2 spot.